We hit it?
Yeah.
Welcome, class is back in session.
Well, welcome everybody to our workshop on understanding disability and the intersection with wellness. I'm Max Barrows. I'm Outreach Director for Green Mountain Self-Advocates. I've been working for GMSA for 9 years, and I am a person with autism, and I'm glad to be here presenting to you all today.
Hello, everyone. I'm Nicola Blank, Advocacy Director, Green Mountain Self-Advocates, also known as the Budget Watchdog.
Hi, my name's Sky Peebles. Can you hear me okay? Okay, cool. I work at Green Mountain Self-Advocates too as the program director. I'm an ally, which means I don't have a disability, but I support the disability rights movement. And I got involved in self-advocacy because my sister, Sterling, has Down syndrome, which is a kind of intellectual or developmental disability. And she and I are pretty much the same age. We're like 13 months apart, so we went to school together, Montpelier, all the schools, like, you know, each grade, we were in the same grade. So I've grown up around issues around disability my whole life, and it's something we've always talked about. And so when I moved back to Vermont a number of years ago, I was lucky enough to get involved with Green Mountain Self-Advocates, and have just had a really awesome time being part of this great organization. So we're really excited to be here and meet all of you and hear all your thoughts and just bring you into this conversation as partners. So feel free to really participate as much as you want to. We may get up in the audience with you a little bit, so get ready and get cozy.
So obviously, as you can see, this is not a grocery store. So we would like to just take this time and just like in this workshop, we want this to be comfortable in terms of like a comfortable space. So that way, this is a great chance for you to ask whatever you want of us. Feel free to ask any questions that come to mind, because this workshop is a great opportunity to do so.
And Max, can I make just another quick reminder? So this is the first time that you'll see us, but we'll be back again in June, and then we're going to do some webinars later this summer. So if you have like a question, it seems like you're asking it, we're like not answering it, it's very possible it's because we're going to do a whole workshop on it in June. So we have this parking lot sort of up here, so we're just going to kind of jot down things that come up. So like yesterday, there were a lot of questions specifically about like reasonable accommodations. So we put those in the parking lot because in June we have some really amazing trainers coming to talk about like the ADA and reasonable accommodations. So just a reminder, so if something comes up that you'd like to make sure we really hit on in the future, just let us know and we'll put it up here. So thanks.
So why are we here talking to you about this today? You may be wondering. The purpose of Green Mountain Self-Advocates is for people with developmental disabilities to educate peers to take control of their own lives, make decisions, solve problems, and speak for themselves. We educate and make the public aware of our strengths, rights, wants, and needs of people with developmental disabilities. Green Mountain Self-Advocates has 21 local groups throughout the state of Vermont, with over 600 members who have an intellectual and developmental disability involved. We help self-advocates by letting them say what they believe, and GMSA has been working on projects related to health for a number of years. So just to give you a little bit of an inside scoop on that, we worked with Planned Parenthood to develop the first ever curriculum for self-advocates and staff to teach sexuality education as a team. We conducted focus groups on the healthcare experiences of people with developmental disabilities in collaboration with the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, and presented with physicians at national conferences and webinars about this. Last year, we co-organized the Vermont Inclusive Healthcare Partnership Project, and we did that along with the Vermont DD Council, and we spent a year working with doctors, nurses, families, and other stakeholders to look at the barriers to the healthcare experienced by Vermonters with developmental disabilities and to come up with solutions. And through that, we wrote a final white paper of our findings and would be happy to share with anybody who would like to look at that. So again, we are very happy that you are here today because you are committed to helping people with disabilities partner in the healthcare process. So we would like to start this training by looking forward to hearing from your ideas and experiences, and because we know that we learn from you as we spend the day together. So we would like to begin our training with bringing the voices of people with developmental disabilities to this room. And so what we are going to do is we're going to start out by kind of getting an in-depth look of what impacts us more than our disabilities, and that is the words, attitudes, and actions of others. And a lot of people say that that impacts our lives more than our disabilities. So the way we're going to do that is we are going to pass around a backpack loaded with rocks. And when you get the backpack, take out a rock, and each rock has a comment on it. And the comments that are on the rocks are they're not fake, they're actually real. Read it, and if the words seem too small, ask the person next to you for help. And then after you take out a rock, pass the bag on to the next person. So when you do this, just listen as the quotes on the rock are read. And as that's going on, we will not discuss after every rock quote on the rock is read. And so many of the rocks have stories on them from adult members that we have collaborated with and done work with and that are involved. So with that said, you will see a backpack being passed around, and let's begin.
What if people talk or write things about you behind your back?
I stutter and people just answer for me. I just need time to answer.
What would you do if people said you're not allowed to go to a bar?
My disability causes my hands to be twisted, but I still want to write things down on paper or handle my own money. I just need extra time to do this, but everyone grabs things from my hands and does it for me.
There are times I feel I have to be perfect at everything, and that there is no room for error. It's like living in a world where people without disabilities can make mistakes, but people with disabilities cannot.
I have my own way of doing things, so why do people tell me to do things their way?
What if when you show your emotions or tell people how you feel, you get more meds?
Even if an activity is fun, that doesn't mean I want to go do it every day.
What if there are team meetings about your life, but you never get to invite who you want to be there?
What would you say if people said you could never have children?
I was right in the room when everyone was making decisions about my life.
They took my kids away because they said I had a disability and I wasn't able to raise them.
I have another case manager. They were hired before I even met them. They got to look at my whole life and no one even asked me about this person.
I am 43 years old and have never been on a date. I really want to be dating someone. I want to have a boyfriend.
What if you made an embarrassing mistake and everybody where you work and live, including your family, knows it?
What if you wanted to call your family and were told it had to wait until later?
What if you were constantly judged because of something you did in the past?
What if you had a disability and you heard people use the word retarded?
I want to see my girlfriend on Friday night, but no one will take me. Why do I only get to spend time with her during the week at public places like bingo?
What if you had to ask people's permission to be alone with someone?
I know my support staff has been doing this for 15 years, but that doesn't mean there's nothing more for them to learn.
What if one day you had to clean your room before you could go to see a movie?
What if people stared at you all the time because of the way you look?
People care about me and want to protect me, and I appreciate that, but I don't want to be protected from living my life.
I bounced another check. Now my case manager is threatening to take my checkbook away from me.
I've made mistakes in the past, it is true, and I've learned some things from my mistakes, but I never get another chance.
What if people tried to run your life instead of letting you make choices?
What if you were told you could not have pets?
What if you got into trouble and were sent away and you couldn't come back because they always remember your trouble?
What if someone asked you a question and while you were thinking of your answer, someone decided for you?
What if you were told you could never be your own guardian?
What if someone said you could not have sex or even hold hands with the person you love?
What if you couldn't go outside because the last time you went, it rained?
What would you do if people took your things like your computer, your phone, your iPod away from you when you make a mistake?
I have no privacy now. How will my parents deal with me when they find out that I am gay?
What if your money was always kept in an envelope where you couldn't get it?
Going into the community poses a tremendous amount of stress on a person with autism. There are so many stimulants. I quietly think to myself, but my sensory system screams out. I want to stop myself, but my autism takes over. Is it weird to quickly flap my hands and say words that have no relevance to any conversation? Yes, it does look very different, but we with autism are not.
What if you were 54 years old and were told when you had to go to bed?
They told me I could never go to college. Why not? I have dreams too.
Another barrier was teachers telling me, if you take the mainstream high school classes, your spirit will be harmed by setting expectations beyond her ability.
I am stimulus aware. This makes me need to drown it out. The stimulus that bothers me is light, noise, sounds from the lights, and people in the room. I love people, but they make too much noise.
What if you were abused, but you were afraid to tell your caseworker because she did not approve of who you hang out with?
Whispering about me, I can hear you, whether or not I'm able to tell you with words.
I love my family, but living at home with them at my age takes a toll on my self-esteem.
And the backpack is up back. If you would return your rocks to it when you leave for break, that'd be great. Thanks.
Okay, so sometimes people say that having a disability is a burden, but we encourage people to be proud of who they are, and that includes having a disability. So the real burden is the words, attitudes, and actions of others. And so that is what weighs us down. So imagine every rock with the comment on it being a weight, and that backpack, as you take out the rock, it's lessening the weight, but once you put it back in, it's what weighs us down. So it's kind of like the in-depth look, the feel of what people with disabilities face every day. So any thoughts on what you heard? Anything that stood out for you? Anything that surprised you? Anything you want to comment on in general? Go ahead.
Hi. Thank you. What was nice about these rocks is that the message is so clear. Many times when I have worked with patients with disabilities, and I'm sorry, I'm a nurse, so sometimes I'll say patients, but individuals with disabilities, getting that clear communication back, either because of speech problems or the way the message is worded, I may not be getting the message that this individual wants to portray. And any automated devices that you find may help, I'd be interested to know. I'm familiar with Pascal Chain's work at the Howard Center, who uses a computer technology for members who cannot speak. And you speak very clearly. And so it's just any hints that you have or tools for any communication facility by an automated device, be it a cell phone or a special tablet, I'd be interested to know about. Thank you.
I'm going to put that just in the parking lot to make sure because in June we have a whole communication unit to talk about technology to assist with communication. That cover, would that, is that, okay.
Go ahead.
I don't know if I do. So what I just heard is a lot of, it sounds like the workers that they've been working with are not functioning from a strengths-based approach, and they're not focusing on what their needs are and what their wants are. And I think that that's a problem because we often think, oh, we know what's best for them, and we know what's going to work for them, and sometimes we have to remind ourselves that we have to continuously ask them what their needs are, just as people.
Comments? As Max said, thank you for your comments and for reading those out loud.
Can you turn your mic up barely individually?
Yes, or I can just use it better. How about that?
Great.
Okay, cool. I'm actually going to unhook it because I'm feeling stifled. Oh, no, I think if I'm just going to hold it. I'm happy to hold it. Thank you. Does this work?
Yes.
Cool. So as Max said at the beginning, and I'm Sky again, so we're really happy you're here because this is a partnership. So we're here because we have some ideas and some tools and strategies that we'd like to just, present and sort of have a conversation with you about. And you're the ones who go out every day and do this enormous amount of work and just have this fabulous influence in your communities and in your jobs and in your personal lives. So we're just excited to have you here as our partners and look forward to hearing about all the ideas and things that you have to say. But to get an idea of who's in the room, because right now you're all kind of anonymous, so who's here as a nurse? Can you raise your hand? Oh, we have a lot of nurses. Awesome. Is anyone here like an MD or a PA or an NP? Okay, great. One? Okay, awesome. Anyone here from housing, from SASH? Wow! Let's hear it for SASH. Good, that's awesome. Anyone here a case manager or a care coordinator? Okay, another, wow. Is anyone raising their hand twice? Okay, awesome. Anyone here from Developmental Services? Yeah, woohoo. Anyone here from the mental health side of things? Cool, awesome. Who am I missing? Anyone here an educator? I mean, you're all educators in your own right. Hi, cool, wonderful. Anyone that I didn't mention? Blueprint? Yeah. Okay, awesome. Okay, great, wonderful. And substance abuse? Oh, substance abuse, great. Thank you. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to omit that. I'm just running through the list in my head. Wonderful. And does anyone here have a family member with a disability? Fabulous. Anyone have like a friend or a neighbor or someone else in their life that isn't a family member with a disability? So pretty much everyone. That's fabulous. Well, we're really excited to hear all the thoughts that you have. So welcome. And again, feel free to get up and move, get water, use the restrooms. We're very flexible. So just want to make you comfortable for the next little bit. I'll hand it to Nicole to talk about your learning goals for today.
If you want to refer to the list of learning goals in your folder, you will be looking for this list. By the end of this workshop, our goal is for you to be able to, 1, demonstrate basic knowledge of what disability is and how our understanding of disability has changed over time. 2, identify the unique personal and cultural barriers people with disabilities face when accessing health care. 3, embrace the need for and promote strategies such as self-determination, dignity of risk. 4, know where you can access more resources on this topic. We'll take some time at the end of the day for your feedback on how well we've done at meeting these goals.
Thanks, Nicole. So Kirsten did a great job of introducing you to the social determinants of health, and it's actually a great place to come in, this being your first day of training, because you're kind of like brimming with ideas and like a fresh slate. So we're really looking forward to brainstorming a little bit. But wellness is something I just want to touch on quickly, and I know it's hard to read, but up there it's sort of a heart shape and it has a lot of different words inside of it. So I think what helps for a lot of people is not thinking about wellness. It helps to think about what wellness isn't to begin with. So wellness is not just eliminating sickness, and it's definitely not the absence of disability. Like, I kind of like to think of wellness as being a pie, or like anything that goes into like a bowl. It's a combination of things. It's positive health that is made up of a lot of different things. So pie is the positive health in this example. I'm a big baker and a big consumer of baked goods. So I think that's kind of a useful analogy for me. So in that pie of positive health, you have your physical health, but you also have your emotional health. You have your mental health. You have your social health, your spiritual health, your vocational health, a lot of the things that Kirsten started to talk a little bit about. So wellness looks really different for everyone. So if I were to poll everyone in this room, I will not, don't worry, but we'd have like a long list probably of things that contribute to that pie, sort of that 1 week a year maybe, where we all feel like all of our wellness components are coming together in that sort of perfect fruition that turns, and you feel fulfilled. You feel like this fullness of wellness, I like to call it. So for me, wellness looks like I get to spend time with my dog in the woods. I get to have dinner with my husband, and we don't watch like movies the entire time. Like, we talk and say like, how was your day? It was great, thanks. It's like getting to go for a run, like eating the foods that I want and feeling really successful at my job and like really loving working with my coworkers. There's like all these pieces, when they come together, I have this sort of overwhelming sense of all this like positive health, because all these pieces are contributing. So I'd love to hear what other people in this room think contribute to their wellness. So just, I can probably keep up, but just shout them out. And I'll repeat them so we don't have to pass the microphone around. But what makes you feel a sense of wellness?
Being outdoors.
Being outdoors, awesome.
Quiet time.
Awesome, quiet time, being outdoors.
Having balance.
Balance, tell me more about balance.
Pardon?
Tell me more about balance.
Just trying to put different things in perspective and keeping your priorities as to what's important.
Yeah. Keeping your priorities to what is important to you. Awesome. What else?
Getting exercise.
Exercise, yes.
Creativity.
Yes. Awesome. Creativity. Baking?
Reiki.
Reiki.
Family.
Family. Definitely.
Being appreciated.
Yeah. Being appreciated.
Not letting negative people affect me.
Not letting negative people affect you. Did I hear movement too? So not letting negative people affect me. I promise you, these are letters, and I will read this, so.
Laughter.
Okay.
Reflection on self. Take a minute every day to figure out, like, you could have been kinder or whatever about yourself.
That's really wonderful. Yeah. Reflection on self.
Fresh air.
Fresh air.
Money to spend.
Yes.
Pets.
Pets. That's awesome.
Chocolate.
Chocolate does help. We have a lot of it here in the room today, so make sure you get your full.
Gratitude.
Did I hear somebody say sleep? Yes, that's huge.
Freedom.
Sleep. Freedom.
Gratitude.
Gratitude. Thank you.
Water.
Economic security.
Music.
I heard job security. I heard music.
Novel opportunities.
Safety.
Novel opportunities. That's a great one.
Deep breathing.
Deep breathing. Yeah.
Safety.
Safety. That's really important. Who said that? Awesome. Hi, behind the camera. Cool. Thank you. And I'm sorry we're not going to get to learn everyone's name, but if you want to say your name when you say something, feel free to, so we can connect on that too.
Flexibility.
Yeah. Flexibility.
Good attitude.
Yes.
Housing.
Housing.
That we're doing crazy.
Mindfulness.
Spirituality.
Spirituality. Great.
Friends.
Food.
Friends, and I heard good food. Like your idea of good food or other people's idea of good food?
My idea.
Yeah.
My idea.
Reading a good book.
I heard reading a good book, and I also heard traveling. Yeah. Couple more?
Appreciating sights and sounds of nature.
Appreciating sights and sounds of nature, and then hobbies. So what I'll end up doing with these hobbies, I'm going to have to quickly go translate this because I sort of got a little scribbly. So what I'll do with these is I'm going to add these to this heart. These are actually things that other components that people from the Brattleboro Montpelier trainings have added to this sort of heart, so I'm just going to kind of keep adding to it, and then I don't know what will happen with it, but perhaps someday it will float its way into your inbox. But thank you for that. And I mean, one of the things that's great about wellness is that it's not the same for anyone, so nobody here is going to have the same list. And as care coordinators, care managers, and all your different jobs, you're not going to be able to sort of put all of your pieces together and find the same solution for every one person towards like achieving their set of wellness, which is great, right? That's sort of the amazing thing about being human. Everyone's different. That's really cool, but it makes your jobs a little bit more challenging. So one of the things that we're going to do today is hopefully talk about some tools and strategies that will work for everybody, no matter who they are. So they're tools that are applicable, and although we're talking about people with disabilities specifically, we think that these are tools that are actually really pretty useful for working with anyone, no matter who they are. So just wanted to point that out. So these are strategies that will hopefully work for 10 out of 10 people that you see in your life. And actually, we'll skip this because Kirsten did a great job.
So one of the first things we want to talk about today is the language that we use. And language is very powerful because it can either do two things. It can have it could build people up or have the opposite effect of tearing people down. So my question to you all is, raise your hand if you've heard of people or person first language. Oh, practically all of you. And can you just quickly give me an example of what you've heard in that regard?
A person who is gay.
Yeah.
What makes that person first?
It's the word person in front of the descriptor or the label.
Any others?
I had a friend working at an agency in Massachusetts 25 years ago who got a memo that said, we will now call our clients people. Kind of ironic and strange. So, but they actually sent a memo and said, we'll now call them people.
Awesome.
Bizarre.
Right, so I guess, go ahead.
Often I hear people call an individual who struggles with substance abuse as an addict, and we have moved away from that and now just talk about them as a person who struggles with an opioid use disorder.
Good to point out, go ahead.
When I think of person-first language is that, with the example of an addict, it almost implies that that's all that that person is. But when you say a person with addiction, they're also maybe a person with a family and a person with a job and a person with that's one part of who they are, not all of who they are.
Yeah. Great comment, go ahead.
I think it's the same with if you have a mental health issue as well. Like you'll hear people referred to as schizophrenic, but they're actually a person who has schizophrenia.
Say older adults instead of elderly or seniors.
Yeah. I'm just amazed by hearing this because I have some examples of that actually, and all of your answers are really good. And just to pick up on that, you are right that person-first language is the concept of putting the person before the disability or whatever it is. And this is important when we are talking about people or two people with disabilities. And so you guys came up with really good examples, but to add to that, I have a few that I would like to share myself that I came up with. So say person with an intellectual or developmental disability instead of mentally retarded. As one of my peers says, when we hear the word retarded or retard, it makes us want to curl up in a ball and die.
Actually, it's hide.
Or hide. Say she doesn't speak or is nonverbal instead of she is mute or they are mute. Say he has or is a person with instead of saying suffers from something. Say, quote, uses a wheelchair or mobility device instead of saying wheelchair bound. Wheelchairs allow people and our ability to move and get around and about. For adults, developmental disabilities, you should say, instead of developmentally delayed. Say she struggles with, or they struggle with mental health instead of saying they have a mental health disorder. Some people feel that it's negative when they hear the word disorder because the word disorder itself can sound like, well, if you can't get things in order or you have trouble with organizing, then you are just someone who cannot organize at all, or you function in a way that's not, to a certain standard. Say, quote, they struggle with the disease or addiction. An example was, shared earlier. Or they have an addiction instead of addicts. So that was clearly shared. If someone is part of the deaf community and is deaf, say that they are deaf. And if someone has, mild or moderate hearing loss, say hard of hearing. And these words are preferred over hearing impaired. And avoid using the word the before a group of people, such as the blind or the deaf, because instead say people who are blind, because when you imply the word the before a group of people, it makes it sound like they're like a separate species. So, the this, the that, instead say this, or blind, or a person who's deaf. So the other thing I would like to mention is, this is pretty common for people with autism. We feel it would be better just saying someone who is on the autism spectrum or has autism, or someone who has, with autism. A lot of times, a lot of people use the term high and low functioning, and that can be hurtful because the term itself brings out the message that people with autism of all different forms are divided. So people that have mild forms of autism are known to be better than people that have more moderate or significant forms of autism. So the term high-low functioning brings that negative message out. And it also is the case for all disabilities, not just autism. So it would be better off if that was not used. Instead, just say someone on the autism spectrum, because then you're describing somebody with autism as like the whole spectrum, and no matter where they are on the spectrum, you're saying that they have their own, strengths. The other thing I would like to point out is, a lot of you are nurses and work all kinds of jobs, but the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual does not recognize the term Asperger's anymore, which was the claimed term for the so-called high-functioning autism. Instead, they have said autism spectrum disorder. So just to point that out as we talk about language. So are there any other questions on these before I move on? I know I just talked at you, but do you have any thoughts or observations you want to share? Go ahead.
I just find it interesting in professional circles, when we're all around a table, we'll often use the quick label language, and I find it painful sometimes, and I kind of understand it, but I think when we're talking to each other, putting the person first language is really important.
Right.
Can I make a quick comment to that?
Go ahead.
Actually, so a couple of other people in previous trainings have touched on that topic. And a woman said in Brattleboro, she said, the thing is that I need to use the same language that everyone else in my office uses, because that's how we communicate. It's like an office culture. So I can't use a word that other people aren't using. They have to be able to understand what I'm talking about. So it brought up this, and as you're saying, there's this great opportunity for culture shift. So sort of as you're here at this training, it's this great opportunity to make that culture shift so that everyone is speaking about the same thing, using the same words, if that makes sense. there's a lot of shorthands, so just figuring out how to make that substitution and sort of that ripple effect. But it's a great comment.
Go ahead.
I was going to add that I also find people first language in other areas like the free and reduced lunch crowd, you know, that type of thing, so tied to socioeconomic or some of those social determinants that we have.
Did everyone hear that?
No.
Could you repeat
Can you repeat that again?
I have no idea.
Are there some mics up there? I'm from Vermont Family Network, you know, support families at education meetings, and a lot of times working with educators or other people, and this is not to criticize them, but it's like quick shorthand. People will say the free and reduced lunch kids, the poor families, you know, and it's just, I keep going back to this as well, people first. It's not everything about the person.
I was just going to comment on where Ken could have gone. I'm sorry. Just to follow up on what was happening here. There's the difference between the clinical language and people language. So yeah, sometimes a bunch of medical people get together and they can talk medical, but when they come and talk to the patient, the doctor has to change that language and talk a different language. But this is a different thing. I can understand how sometimes we're talking the clinical, but yeah, when we're talking about people, it's got to be that people first language. And I mean, we've gone all the way through it with race, immigration, sex, men and women, how we use language around each other. It's the same thing with disability. You have to make that cultural shift. And sometimes you have to be the one to make it happen.
But why is it important to use respectful language when you talk about people with disabilities, or anybody in that matter?
Fosters an atmosphere of equality, to repeat.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Autism. And I think it'll be interesting if we can come up with a different word in the future, not disabled. He's just learning about it and learning that he has a disability. And he said to me this morning, well, I don't think I have a disability. What's wrong with these people? The word disabled I hate.
I can't hear you. Can you hold the mic a little?
No, I'm all set, thanks.
It wasn't
Can you
heard.
repeat, Sky?
Well, it's not my fault I didn't have it turned on.
Yeah, so do you want me to try to paraphrase? Sure. What's your name?
Angie.
So Angie's saying she has a child with a disability and that he's starting to learn about his disability, and he's sort of saying like, well, I don't have a disability. That's not something that like he identifies with, and that like you struggle with the word disabled, and hope that in the future there can be an alternative word.
Right.
Do you want to speak a little bit about identity first language, Max? Because that is something, so in the whole sort of world of people with disabilities, there's a lot of different opinions about language. And as Kirsten said, not everybody agrees.
Right. And I think, you know, identity first versus person first language, I've run into many, you know, debates about this. But it is tricky because the idea of person first language that we strongly encourage is, and of course, like a lot of you said, it's less judgmental in their people. You're putting the person first. And a lot of people believe that if they put the disability first, you know, it's the concept of that's all they are, that's all who they are. But it's also respecting how that person or whoever you're talking about, you know, wants to be identified. Because they may want, I mean, there will be people that you will, you know, encounter or probably have encountered already that don't use person first language and they refer to themselves as a disabled person or an autistic person. And they are comfortable with using language that they identify by putting their disability first than themselves as a person. I think what if it comes down to is, you know, asking the person that you're interacting with, how do you want to be referred to as? It can be tricky, but that's what it comes down to, because you don't want to disrespect how that person likes to be referred to and how they identify themselves, with also in keeping in mind that you don't want people to think that they're just what their disability is. It's a very tricky position, and there is a lot of debate about it, but it does come down to what the person likes to be referred to.
Cole, do you want to add anything?
Yes, the issue of identity first is a tricky thing. And also, if we look at, you often hear people that are culturally deaf, they don't consider themselves disabled.
With a capital D.
With a capital D.
So,
and as you were talking about your child not considering that they have a disability, it's like that's definitely interesting. Like I wanted to think years from now people will use the term differently abled. Because what you're getting at is that, the word disabled implies unable.
That's it.
What's attached to that word?
Just very quickly. Somebody have a question? I'm so sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just curious, getting back to the language part that you were talking about, whether there are any studies or any tracing in the historical changes in the language over, say, the last 100 years or 150 years. Has anyone ever looked at that, how the language has changed during that time period to show where we were and where we're at and where we want to move towards?
Well, there's videos that have, if you see videos of closing institutions like Lost in Laconia, which is a New Hampshire institution that closed in '91, they said the school for the feeble-minded. Definitely shows the language they used.
what about the respectful? This would be.
And Vermont also got a respectful language bill passed a few years ago. We went through all the statutes, came up with all the words to eliminate as advocates.
Statutes in what?
In state law.
What Nicole is describing is
Words like moron, idiot. MR, insane. Still a lot of things that have to be changed, especially at a federal level, even though we have Rose's Law, which eliminated the R word.
But I put that in the parking lot just because I think it would be interesting to see if there is a timeline out there, and if there is, then we can bring it in June or attach it to the very long email of resources you're going to get after this training. Good question.
So with all that in your heads now, we are going to do a couple of activities to check out respectful in-person first language in the world around us. So we are using handout number 1, as in your folders. And what I would like you to do is turn to the person you are sitting near or next to you, and you will have 5 minutes for the first activity. Use your phone to go on Google and to find stories about people with disabilities, and notice whether or not they use respectful or person-first language. And then when we tell you that to move to activity number 2, you will have another 5 minutes to think about your place where you work, like your office job or wherever, and whether or not they use respectful or person-first language. Have 5 minutes, and then after 5 minutes is up, you'll hear another ding, and then you go to a new activity, and you'll have another 5 minutes. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Okay.
Good is.
Yeah. Okay. I struggle. So, I like your question about language, because we're yeah.
A big award the other day.
Yeah, CAX.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's a great article. Oh, it's quiet. Okay, go ahead, Max.
So let me ask you, what have you found? If you want to share any examples or things that you would, oh, go ahead. Wow, okay. You want to go first? Go ahead.
I found something interesting. I looked up wheelchair sports federations, and in their first paragraph, they spoke of themselves as providing opportunities for the disabled, which I didn't find particularly person-centered or people-first. But then they redeemed themselves because in the next paragraph, they were talking about a coach who works in adaptive sports, and I thought that was quite a respectful term. It's a positive term to me.
Anybody, go ahead.
I just found a headline that said "Blind athlete wins race" or something like that. And it's especially, I think, important with headlines because that's often the only thing that people read, and it makes a big impact. And obviously, I mean, the fact that you're an accomplished athlete, that's quite an accomplishment. And the fact that it's the person that is visually impaired or is blind is, frankly, secondary. So.
Hi, I found a headline that said wheelchair-bound couple in Florida upset over receipt, and their receipt was identified at the bottom of the receipt, the chair. So that's how they were pointing out who to give the check to.
I'm the parent of an adult daughter with disabilities. When she was young, around 4 years old, we had two reporters that came to talk to us about her disability. One reporter had 26 years of experience of writing articles about people with disabilities. The other one was brand new, 2 weeks. And then the articles came out. Remember, they heard the same thing. And if you Google my daughter's name, the first thing that comes up is doomed. And the guy who was the one that had done it all his life, like 26 years, wrote an article, and the title of it was "Girl is Doomed." I've never even used that word to describe my daughter. And the other guy wrote an article that said parents are seeking answers to a puzzle, because she was a puzzle at the time. She does have Rett syndrome. But anyway, I just wanted to say it was an eye-opener for me, being a young parent, how somebody could perceive that conversation to use the word doomed. I mean, we never thought of our daughter as doomed. And to this day, she's 34 years old. You Google her name, and the first thing that comes up is the word doomed. So it can have a lifelong, this language can follow people forever. And I just had to say that for me as a parent, it changed my life. And I learned a lot of things to help other parents when they deal with the media or anything like that. But it was sad. It was a sad lesson.
And what you're getting at, a good example of how, what's said as a kid can also lead to low expectation syndrome as you get older.
Were there any? Oh,
I went to Facebook instead. My husband has a neurological disability, and at one point he joined a group on Facebook related to his medical condition, and he told me he unjoined the group, but he didn't really say why. And I'm not sure that he pays a lot of attention to the language per se, but the first thing that stuck out in my mind, it says, "My fellow Ataxians." And it sounds to me like aliens, or so that just struck me as people within the group referring to themselves maybe in a way that might be offensive to other people. I think it was to him.
What about exercise? Oh, go ahead. Did you have your hand up?
The one thing I did is I had Googled the people first language, and one of the articles that caught my eye was by a Kathy Snow, and it's called People First Language, and it said to ensure inclusion, freedom, and respect for all, it's time to embrace the people first language. And she's got right in the center of the article, if my phone will cooperate here, a quote from Mark Twain, and it says, "The difference between the right word and the almost right word is the difference between lightning and the lightning bug." And I think that in terms of when we speak of people who are just a little bit different than we are, we need to always be respectful and mindful of that.
What about activity number 2? What about your workplace? Go.
A lot of us in here work for housers, and people that take applications have check boxes and lines of finance, and that spreads into the culture where people are categorized by their poverty or disability or their age. And so the language around in my office, not necessarily disrespectful, but again, the culture of speaking in labels for ease is pretty prevalent. And I found myself using it myself. Subsidized versus, open free market pricing and all that kind of stuff.
So I found myself thinking about, like, when I'm working with a client specifically, I really am conscious about the language that I use. But then I notice, like, behind closed doors or when you're in the office and no client is representation of themselves, I think that the language kind of shifts a little bit. And I feel like I'm guilty of that myself, just kind of venting about certain activities that could have happened, but I could be more mindful behind closed doors and just, I don't know.
Just to kind of piggyback off of what you said is, working at a methadone clinic, there's stigma already attached to it. And we work a lot with corrections, and one of the things that I've been struggling with is a lot of the people that we work with are coming out of corrections or coming from incarceration, and so we end up referring to people as offenders or inmates, or when we're working with probation officers. So I think it's a sort of like a systemic issue that is sort of just ingrained in the way that we work and part of our culture. And we use it on a daily basis, and we have to be mindful of what our own personal biases are. And I think that's where, at least where I'm understanding the shift that needs to happen at.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for doing that. We got a break for lunch. So on that note, we are going to break for lunch until 1 o'clock. So, and we will get started with, our training when we get back. So have a good lunch and see you back here at 1 o'clock.